So, people, I don't know if you've seen this right here, but 20 years is nothing. Close and accept, whatever that is. In the previous edition of this magazine, we argued English was so pervasive in our industry, nobody even questioned its use anymore. The same can be said of Git. It is difficult to imagine that merely 20 years ago, the landscape of source control tools was more diverse. 20 years ago, I was using Tortoise, SVN, Tortoise. Okay, have you heard of Tortoise? I don't think you have. I don't think you have any clue what a Tortoise is. Cows literally do not make mayo, but still cool. Yeah, isn't mayo made out of egg whites? And something else? Tortoise, SVN. Yeah, I know. It is difficult to imagine that merely 20 years ago, the landscape of source control tools was more diverse, and the choice of one such tool was more complicated than today. Actually, Git was not even on the map yet. True, Git was 2005, right? Git, when was Git created, right? That was 2005? Yeah, April 7th, 2005. Bam, 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 bam. Soybean oil, gross. Git is now a pretty dang good source control, even for large files and stuff. Actually, Git was not even on the map yet. Before debating whether the hegemony of Git is good or bad, let us go back in time for a little while. One of the most famous tangos of all time, Carlos Gardel, famously sings, "To feel that life is a breath of fresh air, that 20 years is nothing, that feverish the gaze, wandering in the shadows, seeks and names you." I'm not sure what it's about, to tell you the truth. I don't even know what that's about. I'm lost in the poetry. Lost in the poetry. Okay? Lost in the sauce. Anyways, the second edition of Code Complete by Steve McConnell was published in 2004. On page 668 of this 900-page volume, we find the only reference to the subject of the source control in the whole book, about 3/4 of a page long. Nothing else. ChatGPT can easily summarize all of it with one phrase: version control software is good and brings several benefits. Not a lot to phone home about. We're really far from GitOps at this point. Wow, that is kind of crazy. That's not even that long ago. This is 20 years ago. People just didn't even think about this stuff. They're just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, you should just use version control because it's good. Okay, the same year, almost exactly 20 years ago, at the time of the publication of the article, Subversion.io saw the light of day. What was Subversion? Probably the shortest-lived idea with good intentions in the history of computing. See, Subversion, or SVN, was supposed to be better than CVS. No, not the pharmacy, but the other thing. Oh, yeah, better than CVS meant back in those days to be transactional database, anyone, and to have somewhat better support for branches. We do not have higher ambitions back then, kids. I honestly didn't really understand the difference between Git and SVN when I first started using Git. I was just like, that feels like SVN. Tom's a genius. Yeah, if you didn't understand, dude, honestly, I was just like, this is like SVN, but with a lot of branches and stuff. I didn't know how good it was, okay? I didn't understand. Okay, I didn't understand. Linus Torvalds, however, did the higher ambition. In 2004, the Linux kernel developer got increasingly strong disagreement over the use of BitKeeper, the proprietary distributed version control system used to manage the kernel source code. So what is a developer to do? Well, Linus has a tradition of writing the software everybody needs and nobody wants to start. He also has a tradition of naming things after himself. Legend says that the first version of Git was written in a couple weeks. Isn't Git an insult? In Americanese version 0.1. Is that true? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. CVS. Never heard of CVS? It was source control system that Joel Spolsky, described in September 2000 as fine, emphasis his, in the first item of his eponymous Joel test for better software. I have used commercial source control packages, and I've used CVS, which is free. And let me tell you, CVS is fine. Give this man chief marketing officer position right now. I mean, this guy needs to tweet. Yes, the first step for better software was, shocker, using source control software. As a side note, I started my professional career as a software developer in 1997, and nope, we did not use source control, not even CVS. Yes, you guessed it right. We just saved VB script files locally and uploaded them via FTP. This is like, I lived that life. I lived that life for quite some time. All right, by the way, FTP, fantastic. Flip, I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know how you massage that one out, okay? Good luck, Flip, on that one. Too bad. If we overwrote changes with one another, you only lived once. YOLO, let's go. I have definitely done this. Have you ever overwrote changes on yourself? You know what the worst part about FTP is? When you had two computers and you wrote some really good things, and then on another computer you erased those really good things, and you're just like, dear, why am I my own worst enemy? Why is the killer always in the house? Why? Why? I had to wait till 2002 to use source control system for the first time, and for the curious among you, it was a rationale clear case. Never heard of Joel Spolsky? Well, he was the co-creator of Stack Overflow, which I guess you have used it some point in your career. If you use Copilot, you pretty much are using Stack Overflow. 24 years ago, Joel was one of the first influencers of the burgeoning field of software engineering. Think Kelsey Hightower, but with more controversial views, or Steve Yegge, but with less controversial views. Okay, so I know basically who Kelsey Hightower is. I know nothing about him, and I have no idea who this Steve fella is. You've read all of Joel on Software? Link one of the best Joel on Softwares. We'll read it. Speaking about Stack Overflow, here's an example of the state-of-art source control in 2008. One of the first ever questions asked on the site, dated September 8th, 2008, asked precisely what version control system to use for a single developer workflow. Interestingly, that question was asked precisely at the same time while in the real world, the 2008 financial crisis was breaking havoc. I'm not sure if you break havoc as much as you wreak it. Our industry lives in a bubble, no doubt about that. But I'm digressing once again. That is hilarious. The world is falling apart. So what version control should I use? Which one should I do? Which one should I do? I'm trying to find a source control for my own personal use that's as simple as possible. The main feature I need is being able to read/pull a past version of my code. I'm the only developer. The replies to this question consist of a long catalog of pretty much every version control system known to mankind at that point in time. Windows Control Odyssey. Oh my goodness. But let us return to the year 2000. Okay, for those that don't understand what's happening here, I think if anything, this should just give you an incredible eye into whatever you think is like eternal or should always be used. Like, how much does software change? Like, it is just like so wild. 20 years ago is not a long time. I know for a lot of you Zoomers, that's most of your life. But for a lot of other people, it's not a crazy amount of time. 20 years, nothing. It is like a short amount of time that things like completely change. But let us return to the year 2000. In the year 2000. Anyone name that now? A few days ago, before Joel Spolsky published his Joel test, Mark Lukowski gave a talk titled Windows, a Software Engineering Odyssey at the 4th Usenix, the distant future. Anyone? Conan O'Brien, let's go. Somebody got it. Windows System Symposium in Seattle, Washington. Mr. Lukowski. Why are these all a bunch of what are these people? Why are there a bunch of Skowskis? Where are they from? Are they all fellow Belgians together? Who's the skis? Polish? They're all Poles? They're all Poles? I have no idea. I never know where these things come from. Poles? Okay. Was a member of the original Windows NT team from 1998 to the mid-2000s. The PowerPoint slides of the talk are still available online, and at the time of this writing, and I seriously recommend you take a look at them. Part of the Odyssey was, you guessed it, source control. On slide 14, you can learn that Windows NT 3.51 used an internally developed system, which was on life support by the time Windows 2000. Is that why Windows 2000 and Millennium Edition were the worst Windows of all time? Is that what happened? Is this how this happened? Was it version control that caused all the problems? I'm kidding. It's just Windows. Windows was the problem. You guys actually fell for that. Oops. Not a great way to onboard new team members. Now you know why the Agile Manifesto published in 2001 was so revolutionary. Thanks to Raymond Chen, arguably the most important lecturer of the Windows history, we learned the name of said internal development system. In the early days, Microsoft used a homemade source control system formerly called Source Library Manager, but which was generally abbreviated SLM, slime, right? And pronounced slime. Yeah, that's funny. It was a simple system that did not support branching. Oh, dear. I mean, man, those days, they really believed in trunk-based development. I mean, these guys were trunk-based developing. as hard as they could. In slide 24, Mark Lukowski's PowerPoint slides, we learned that Microsoft took the decision to migrate the source control of Windows 2000 to something called Source Depot. Raymond Chen agrees. Shortly after Windows 2000 shipped, the Windows source code transitioned to a source control system known as Source Depot, which was an authorized fork of Perforce. I was using Perforce at Netflix when I started, 2014 or 2013. 2013, boom, goes the dynamite. We were still using Perforce. The choice had to do with the gigantic size Microsoft Windows source code base. The justification is perhaps less relevant than it was, but Perforce tends to perform better on large repositories than Subversion. Yep. This is one of the reasons Microsoft acquired a source license to Perforce and built Source Depot. NT's repository is a monster, and not many products, commercial or otherwise, can handle it. Perforce sucks. I used it in Pearson's in 2014. Yeah, Perforce does suck. It does. Perforce. Well, that kind of sucks. Mark Lukowski's summarized the benefits of Source Depot in 2 bullet points on slide 24 of his presentation. New machine setup, 3 hours versus 1 week. Normal sync, 5 minutes versus 2 hours. Let's go. We're improving. Is Microsoft Windows team still using Source Depot today? Apparently not. In 2007, we learned that Microsoft migrated all 300 gigabytes of Windows source code to Git. That's a lot of code. That can't be all code. It has to be other things. It just has to be other things, right? It has to be, right? It has spyware, right? 300 gigabytes. I mean, it can't be that. It can't be that. Because that is what? Every gigabyte, if you typed 1 character per second, a gigabyte would take 33 years, right? And so that would be 300 times 33, which is just an enormous amount of time. It literally would take millennia to type that at 1 character per second. So that means if we were to go, if you had 1,000 people on that, it would still take so dang long. 1,000 people typing 1 character per second. It would take a year. So it has to be assets. 1 picture of your mom's nudes. Damn, is that what those 300 gigabytes is? I can confirm, sadly, I should say. Microsoft's adoption of Git, however, was not without hurdles and led to the creation of Git Virtual File System, GVFS project. But Git isn't designed to handle 300 gigabyte repository made up of 3.5 million files. Microsoft had to embark on a project to customize Git to enable it to handle the company's scale. Okay, 3.5 million files. Let's pretend that creating 1 file takes how long? What do you think is a good amount of time per file? No, you guys are just saying the craziest numbers. Like, real talk, what do you think it is? It won't be milliseconds, because that's the literal process of creating a file. Like, you have to be in the correct location. You have to come up with a name for it. You have to then create it. You then have to save it once, right? Unless if you use touch, right? Some things, when you create it, it doesn't necessarily save it. So how long? Let's go with 20 seconds. Is 20 seconds fine? 2 seconds, but you have to think about things a little bit. What do you think the average is? You got to remember that we're not talking about how fast is your fastest file. We're talking about what is the average. You got to remember, some people right-click, they navigate with their little finger to a whole new place. And you got to also remember, like, say sometimes you want to create a file. Well, you have to be in the right directory, so you have to navigate to the directory. Then when you navigate to said directory, then you have to create the file in there. Then you have to name it. Then you have to save it. And then you know. So how long do you think? 20 seconds? Is 20 seconds fair if you average in all those really slow people versus all the really fast people versus files that exist somewhere else versus files that are in this current location, right? All of the stuff, right? 20 seconds. Let's go with 20 seconds. Okay. 350 times 20 seconds divided by 60 seconds divided by 60 minutes divided by 24 hours divided by 365. That means during the life of the Windows project, for 2.21 years straight, people were creating files. Just nonstop file creation for 2.21 years. Dude, what'd you do for, what was your name? I was a full-time file creator. I created files at the speed of 10 seconds. They saw how good it was. Anyways, I know that there's like a bunch of reasons why this is probably not correct and all that kind of stuff. It's just fun to think about that way. It's just fun to think about it in the most dumb way possible. All right. Anyways, the age of Git. The infatuation of Microsoft with Git reached its peak in 2018 when it swallowed GitHub, the platform that arguably made Git mainstream 3 years prior. Sensing l'ère du temps. I'm not sure what that. What does that even mean? Is this like writing on the wall but French style? Okay, sensing what is currently in. They released Visual Studio Code with integrated Git support. By the way, this was Microsoft's greatest play ever to get into every. Like, think about this. One thing you got to be impressed about Microsoft is they saw the value that they didn't even know what was going to happen, but they knew that if they could be in between every developer and their code, they're going to be able to monetize it. And so they knew that was just going to happen. And so VS Code has been VS Code is the longest con that has ever been created. For literally a decade, they knew they just had to be between every single developer and their code. And if they could do that, they will be able to make money. And then years later, Copilot happened, and then that's why they bought GitHub, because they knew if they can be between every developer and their code, they were going to be able to charge a monthly fee on this thing. If they just can, they just knew it. And so they designed all these things to bring people in, and then when it came out, when they probably didn't even know how they were going to do it when they first developed it, right? When they first developed VS Code, they were probably just like, we just need to be between them, and we know at some point we're going to be able to monetize them. And because they're big enough that they can make that kind of investment, right? 30 people paying 30 engineers at a $1 trillion company. Like, is that really like a big thing? No, it's not a big thing at all. So they're just like, go get them. We need to own the ecosystem. Go and get them. Because for a long time they did Microsoft Visual Studio, right? And then when they realized that they could start bringing it into the common person, they made Visual Studio Express. And if you remember Visual Studio Express was like the predecessor to VS Code. Man, that's where they knew for so long that they had to get in between it. And now look at this. Now look, Copilot, who here use Copilot? Press 1 in the chat if you use Copilot. Okay, I want all of you who use Copilot, I want you to turn it off just for one day. That's all I'm asking. One day. And I want you to feel what it's done to you, right? Just turn it off for one day and realize what has just happened to you, right? It is so interesting. It is super interesting. Wait till you do it. Like, I do mean that. You will be shocked at how you've changed. It's very, very interesting. Anyways, it just means they've won. They literally created something that you're addicted to. And now you, like, all those people, like, you guys are you got your money. You got your money from here on out. Let's see. What if you've never turned it on? Does that make you better than all of you, Primogen? I even use Arch, by the way. No, I don't think so. I know you're old pulling the old chain here, Beastco, but I don't think that using or not using Copilot makes you better or worse. But it's very interesting when you're used to Copilot, what it does to you when you turn it off. You realize you are the Copilot. It's incredible. I turned it off by accident, and I realized just how weirdly dependent I was on it. And I was just like, okay, what the hell's happening? And so for the last couple, if you haven't noticed, the last couple streams, I've been doing nothing. It's Jesus takes the wheel, except for it's who's the CEO of Microsoft again? Gosh, I can see his face. Why can't I remember his name? Satya D's nuts, right? Satya, take the wheel. All right, we are in 2024. Git is everywhere. The long evolution that led to Git supremacy in the 2010s and apparently also the 2020s can be summarized as a sequence of open source programs, one replacing the other. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to read this one. GitHub introduced the concept of pull requests to the world as early as February 2008, a feature later adopted and adapted by GitLab, Git and the recent Forge Joe and Bitbucket, which became bread and butter for code reviews during the past 15 years. But the matter of fact is that GitHub also created a paradox in the world of Git. Suddenly, a distributed control system became centralized. Some are understandably aghast by the state of things. I actually do not mind centralized source control. Like, I don't think it's bad. I like the distributed nature of Git. I think distributed nature with centralized authority source, I think is actually pretty cool. I think that's a good setup. I really don't mind it. What I'm shocked about is, I never really thought about it. You can only push and pull. The concept of a pull request doesn't exist in Git. I never really thought about that. Wild, huh? I don't know why I didn't think about this. I know a lot about Git, and it just never really dawned on me. Git only knows email. I know, it's wild. We are in 2024, and Git is everywhere. The long evolution that led to Git supremacy in the 2010s and apparently also in the 2020s can be summarized as a sequence of open source programs, one replacing the other. SSCs in the 1970s, RCS, React Component Servers in 1980s, CVS in 1990s, Subversion in 2000s to ensure a smooth migration path. Subversion could import CVS repositories, and Git can import Subversion repositories. But most importantly, version control systems migrated from local-only systems like SCCS and RCS to client-server architectures, CVS and Subversion to distributed systems like Git and others, most notably Mercurial. Speaking about Mercurial, did you know that Firefox developers recently decided to drop it and use Git instead? I mean, Git is inevitable. Git is the Thanos of version control. Dude, pull request was a script in Git since 2005. GitHub did not invent PRs. I mean, it doesn't have an actual... There's no operation. I don't know this pull request script. True, but it's rest. I don't know the script business. Well, look at this. You learned something new. Request poll. Oh, interesting. Generate a request asking your upstream project to pull changes into their tree. Okay, well, today I learned. I literally... There are so many effing commands in Git. I don't know if you know this. Did you just see that? 147. It's crazy. Git is massive. Git is massive. I'm not surprised that I have no idea about these things. I learn new things about Git all the time. That's what she said. I've never heard her say that personally, but this makes sense for it to be said about Git. Okay. Git and its cheap branching facilities had a lasting impact on developer workflows. Vincent Dreesen published in January 2010 a seminal article titled "A Successful Git Branching Model Introduced the World to the Controversial Concept of Git Flow." Hey, bro, I heard you like branches, so we put branches in your branches. Why controversial? Well, because Bisco, I'm not watching it. Well, because most opinions in software industry are such. Now, there is a GitHub Git Flow and Atlassian Git Flow workflow and many more branching workflows available. Git repositories have become eventful, with every push, merge, or tag operation triggering a workflow somewhere. A whole industry has sprung up, including names such as Argo CD, nuts, GitHub Actions, GitLab CI/CD, pipelines, and Git Runner, providing a new level of automation and convenience. The influence of Git is so strong in this space that the terms GitOps now refers to a whole subset of our industry. But you should not be using branches for deployments. You have been warned. It is really interesting. This is super interesting. That there is an entire cottage industry revolving around using and testing software. That's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy to think about how far we came. The question is simple now. What comes after Git? At this point, is it probably impossible to challenge the immense popularity of Git? I say probably, because in our industry, it's impossible to predict the future. Anyways, the question is simple now. What comes after Git? At this point, it's probably impossible to challenge the immense popularity of Git. I say probably, because in our industry, it's impossible to predict the future. Yeah, I mean, I would say that React is probably in this very similar position right now at this point. But I'd say React has jumped potentially a shark. There might be the thing is that a giant can still fall. React server components is very interesting because there's people who absolutely love React server components and call you a complete asshole for suggesting anything else. And then there's other people who are like, yeah, I kind of like React. I also do all these other things. And then there's other people like me that are like HTMX, 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 right? And so it's interesting. It's very interesting because Git, you don't really have this with Git. I don't know anybody that's like, who would use Git? I use Perforce, dog. I'm all about that Perforce. You know what I mean? I've like never heard anyone say that for any reason. I have no idea. Anyways, there are two interesting contenders worthy to mention. Pijul, written in Rust. It started with OCaml a decade ago. Man, poor OCaml. Or Fossil, written by the creators of SquealLite. Now, this, on the other hand, how much do you want to bet Fossil has one based code of conduct? Do they have an ethics? They don't have an ethics doc. If you read the what's it called? If you read the code of conduct or the code of ethics for SquealLite, it's like, thou shalt not commit murder, thou shalt not defraud your neighbor. It's just like the 10 Commandments and then expounding upon them from some code of conduct that some dude invented like 2,000 years ago. It's pretty funny. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. How old's your code of conduct? Oh, ours is 2,000 years old. Let's be real here. Few people dispute that Git provides a suboptimal user experience. You know, there was that one person that was from Google saying how bad Git is, and I didn't quite understand it. Right? I really did not understand this thing. A lot of underlying implementations show through into the user interface. The user interface is so bad that there is even a parody site that generates fake Git man pages. Yes, Git's man pages are so bad. They've gotten a lot better, but there's still some really bad ones out there. Right, here you go. Acquire saved local graphs for multi-rebase and message reverting unreachable objects. That sounds, I mean, this literally sounds like, it sounds like it. If you ever look at man git tag, right? Add a tag reference in ref tags unless DLV is given to delete, list, or verify tags. Unless F is given, and the name tag must not yet exist. If one of A, S, or U is passed, the command creates tag object and requires a tag message. Unless M or F is given, and an editor is started for the user to type in a tag message. Well, what the hell's a tag? Just tell me what a tag is! Can you just first start with what the hell's a tag? Just nothing. There does not exist. Normal man page. Dude, you read that and you're just like, I don't get it. I know what a tag is. I know what a tag is. And I don't know what I just read. It's a reference in ref/tags. Duh. Everybody knows that. Most people don't know what ref/tags is. Okay? Most people... This would make if you did my Git course, it was your Git course explained this, yes. But you would not understand that unless if you understood that there is something called Git, which inside of here has refs, which inside of here has something like heads, which is master. And if you cat out what master is, you'll see that cat is literally this. And if I go if I do git log one line, you will also see exact same thing, C90. Like it's just like a file. It's just a thing that points to it. Anyways. It's very confusing. While we wait for a better alternative, let us read man7 git everyday page and call git extra source tree git or tortoise git fugitive. Oh yes, fugitive mentioned. Fugitive is by far the best of all plugins. There is no, in my personal opinion, I think fugitive is my favorite way I interact with Git. I use it nonstop. Love it. Absolutely love fugitive. And Magit. Everyone seems to love Magit, though. So Pick would say Magit. People are all about Magit. And then there's a lot of lazy Gitters, which I'm not too sure about lazy Git. I guess I haven't used it. I don't know. It seems that, whether you like it or not, we will probably be storing our source code in Git repositories for the next 20 years. I think that's pretty fair. Isn't it Magit? No, it's Magit. Magit these nuts out of your mouth, okay? Lazy Git is pretty nice. Yeah, people seem to love Lazy Git. I never really got into Lazy Git. I just really liked Fugitive, and I think I'm gonna stick with Fugitive. It's pronounced Jit. Okay. Well, now that we're literally gonna create a holy war here. Magit, I'm pretty sure Magit is in Elden Ring. If I'm not mistaken, that's like your first major boss you fight. And I just didn't like it, okay? I did not like Magit, okay? Way too hard. Honestly, you come walking into Magit and you're like level, like 10, and all of a sudden he calls you tarnished, and then he slaps you around, and then you die. And I died of hubris, is what he told me. But I personally felt I died from a wooden staff that was punched into my face several times. Okay, that's what I thought I died from. But it turns out it was hubris. I didn't know. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that's what hubris meant, being beaten to death by a wooden staff. Any thoughts about Mind Goblin? I think when I really take the time and really just mull it over and really just swish around these nuts, I find that I could Mind Goblin these nuts. Bam, got him. Come on, dude, Mind Goblin. Come on. What is this? You can't these nuts me with that old of a joke. Go mullet. No mullets. Hey, the name is the Primogen.